What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover. Today, I'm super excited because we have a true star, a true celebrity, a true game changer, a true pioneer in the eye care industry this evening. I mean, tonight's podcast is going to be extremely amazing because we can learn so much from this gentleman. He has really helped change the game for us as eye care professionals. Friends and family, I'd like to welcome my colleague, my friend, Mr. Jim McGrann. How are you doing today, this evening, Jim?
Doing great, Darryl. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here on your podcast. I know what a great success it's been, and hopefully I don't do anything to destroy that for you tonight. We'll try to keep you on that high that you're on. That's for sure.
Hey, man, look, I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of this podcast this evening. And I'm super excited to really, peel back the layers of Jim, right?
hmm
Because, you've done so much in the eye care industry. I mean, when I go and look at your LinkedIn timeline and I just see, leadership skills before 1999 and we're in 2022, that speaks volumes of who you are and what you can do and how you impact people. So today I just really wanted to dive deep into your journey, man. And before we get started, I always like to start the show off with just getting to know who's sitting in front of me. Let the
Sure.
listeners, the viewers, our colleagues, to understand who's in front of us. So if you don't mind, just maybe sharing your background, where you went to school, where you live, family, whatever you feel. But let's get to know you a little bit more, Jim.
Sure thing. No, happy to do that. So, I reside primarily in New York City, but I spend a fair amount of time in Michigan. I have my daughter and son-in-law and our two grandkids moved out to Michigan about a year ago. So my wife and I try to get out here at least a week a month and spend time with them. So I'm the oldest of seven. We'll talk a little bit about that in the journey. And grew up in New York, out on Long Island. Went to college in New York City. Went to Columbia University. I'm an engineer by training. Spent the first half of my career in IT consulting, and then, as you noted, got involved in the eye care industry in 1999, joining Marchand, and have loved every minute of being a part of this amazing industry, which we'll talk about tonight. But for me, life is all about my family, and I was mentioned to you when we were warming up. I love following you on Instagram, not only for all the great stuff you do out there for the industry, but I love seeing your children and the way you and your wife interact with them, and it makes me think a lot about. My kids now are 32 and 26, and my grandkids are 5 and 2. So
Oh, wow.
been through the cycle that you're in the middle of. I know you're in the thick right now, but for me, that's what it's all about. And when I found the eye care industry and found Marchand, it gave me a time. When I was consulting before, I was on the road a ton. And joining Marchand, which was based on Long Island, it gave me more time with my family and as my children were growing up. So it's just been a blessing. Joining the industry in '99 and everything I've gotten to do that we'll talk about over the evening.
Yeah, man. I've had the pleasure of seeing you online, but last Vision Expo I was at. I think it was the Prevent Blindness. There was some type of gala or something like that, and I remember everyone was in the building. It was all the movers and shakers in eye care, and you went up and you started talking, and then the whole room got silent, and I was like, man, he got some juice over here, man. Let me listen and let me see what's going on here. And it changed, um, my perspective of what leadership means, what impact means. Because at that point, I went to go look a little further at your background. And I was like, this is why he has that respect. He's made so much of impact in the industry. And the reason why, in my personal opinion, is probably because of your why, right? And I would love to
hmm
dig more in that, but
Sure.
also because you put people first. I mean, at the top of this conversation, the first thing you talked about was your family,
hmm
right?
Yep.
I'm a
Yeah,
firm.
and
You take care of your family, you will take care of everyone else, right? I mean, if you treat people like your family, to me, that's always been the key to success in the exam lane and outside of the exam lane. but I'll love to learn a little bit more about your why, if you don't mind
Yeah.
sharing, Jim.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just going back, and I appreciate the compliment about the Prevent Blindness event, but, I think about that night, and I think about other leaders like Rick Gadd, who we were
Yeah,
honoring that night. Rick is just an amazing guy, and I think that's what the audience really wanted to hear. And honestly, I give Maureen Cavanaugh, if you don't know Maureen was the one who really got that crowd quiet, so I couldn't have done it without her. But, as far as the why, and it's interesting, I think I mentioned it that night. To me, my why, and a why to me is, why do you get up in the morning? Why do you go to your job? And for me, I love the industry, and I love the concept of being a part of helping people see. So to me, I know I am not the doctor. It's doctors like yourself and you guys, the professionals, are the ones that truly help the patient see. But it's just such a wonderful industry to be a part of, where the different roles that we'll talk about tonight, I've always felt a connection to being able to help people see. And I love it. And I think some of my favorite things I've gotten to do during my time at VSP, I got to go on a number of mobile clinic events, and seeing people who are 45 years old and have never had an eye exam, and they put on a pair of glasses for the first time, and they realize, this is what a tree looks like, or this is what my kids look like, or this is what I'm seeing. There's nothing like it. I mean, to be able to make that impact in such a short period of time. And then if I expand on it a little bit, I love to do this exercise that with folks that I learned at a leadership development conference I went to, and it's this sorting of these cards. And sometime you and I'll get a chance, we'll do it. But it basically helps you figure out what your calling is, and you narrow all these cards down to your top 5. And for me, it's always been about facilitating change, solving problems, building trust, adding humor. Hopefully we get to do a little of that tonight. And then bringing joy. And the way I look at it is I sort of, everything in my career now, I try to put through that filter. And if it's able to check all 5 boxes, great. As long as it's checking some, it's awesome. But I think everyone needs to spend time on that why, on that purpose, on what their calling is, to make sure that they're not just mailing it in. Make sure that the role you have in the business you're working in is checking some of those calling cards for you. And that's always been very, very helpful to me as I look at that why.
Yeah, I love that. And, I have the opportunity, the blessing to speak to a lot of students, a lot of new graduates. And I always tell them, they ask me, Dr. Glover, how can I find the right, company to align with and make sure that that's the right decision? And I always tell them, look at your why, your purpose, your core values. Look at the company's why, purpose, and core values.
Absolutely.
Make sure there's some type of alignment between the two. If you see that alignment, you will never work a day in your life, and every day will be impactful. But sometimes, us as students, as new graduates, even as seasoned ODs, we don't really know what our core values are. We don't know what our true why is. Yes, it has something to do with vision, but to your point, I love how you mentioned that filter piece. I think that's huge. So I'm going to take you up on that card game so that I
will. I'll send them to you, and we'll go through it. You got it.
So this is great. This is a great foundation, a good starting point, because you got to understand who you are as a person to have your foundation before you can begin a journey, right?
Correct.
So let's really start with your journey. You mentioned you with Marshawn at first. How do we get into Marshawn, especially with a background with engineering? I mean,
sure.
Marshawn, I think glasses. I mean, I know there's a lot of behind the scenes things that could take place, but let's talk about that and break that down a little bit more, if you don't mind, Jim.
Absolutely. No, happy to do it. So yeah, I think we did an exercise. I did an exercise, another one that's fun to do, where you basically map out your leadership journey and you tie it to both your professional and your personal life. And it's another one I'll show you, and we can spend some time on. But I think if I start at that point, or I'll go back a little bit. I mentioned at the top about being the oldest of 7. I think when you're the oldest of 7, you automatically get thrown into a leadership role, whether you want to or not, because by the time there's 3 or 4 kids, they forgot who you got a job to do, and you got to just go do it. So it developed there. And then I always remember, and I always give this guy credit, but a good buddy of mine, when I was growing up, we had a paper route that we did together, and we had a lawn mowing business and a snow shoveling business. And this guy was just such a great business minded person. Even as a little kid, we'd spend time writing Christmas cards or holiday cards out to all of our customers, and that would turn into snow removal, and that would turn into leaf. And I'd always be like, why are we writing these cards? Let's go do something fun. And he said, you don't understand. It's all about, back then he was giving the customers an experience, and this is the 1970s. Wow. and he's doing it. So it's a buddy of mine, Dave Jensen, and I always give Dave a shout out when I'm talking about my career. But what led me to Marshawn was like I said, I went to school for engineering, but I wasn't your typical like engineer for engineer's sake or technology for technology's sake. I always liked the idea of using technology to help enable business and help business grow. So I studied industrial engineering and then went to work for what's Accenture now. Back when I graduated college, it was the management consulting division of Arthur Andersen. And then I worked for a number of firms like that. I worked at IBM. I always joke about my dad, was really excited that I went to engineering school because he had some cousins that were engineers. And then when I chose to go to an accounting firm as an engineer, he never understood it. He didn't understand what I was doing. I was trying to explain it's not accounting, it's IT consulting. Until I got to IBM, then he was finally able to say, okay, now I understand what he's doing. So did all the consulting. That gave me a good perspective of all the different types of businesses that are out there, what I liked about business, what I didn't necessarily enjoy. And then I was a partner at Ernst & Young in their consulting division, and a good friend of mine was the IBM rep for Marshawn Eyewear. And he gave me a call. This is a guy I played football with in high school. We grew up together. Amazing guy. He said, look, Jim, you're traveling too much. We got to find you a job, where you can be at home. Marshawn's going out to hire their first CIO. I'm not sure they're going about it the right way. I think you could be the right guy. Go in and meet with the owners. So back then it was, Al Berg and Larry Roth and Jeff White, and Jeff was the acting CIO. So we had a great meeting, a good discussion. And I really thought I was just mainly there to educate them on the role of a CIO. And at the end of the meeting, they said, well, what are you doing on Monday? And I thought they were just being kind. And I said, oh, I have this consulting project I'm working on in LA. I got to get on the plane. And then they called me back over the weekend. They said, Jim, look, we really trust Mike and we loved our meeting with you. Would you be willing to join us? And they were on a really nice growth path at that point. They were expanding their business globally. They had acquired OfficeMate, so they had the software side of the business. So, I took them up on the opportunity and spent 10 years working for Al, Larry, and Jeff and helping them expand globally and grow our IT infrastructure and grow OfficeMate. Nice. And then in 2008, we were sold to VSP. The Al, Larry, and Jeff decided to sell to VSP. I think they had a couple of places that were interested, but they liked the fact that in joining VSP, they weren't going to have to lay people off because it was complementary businesses and that the business would continue to go. So when that happened, VSP had Eyefinity, we had OfficeMate. They wanted to merge the businesses and put someone in charge of that entity. So I went out and was the president of the Eyefinity OfficeMate division. Steve Baker from Eyefinity and Ed Buffington from OfficeMate. The three of us worked together to grow that business. And then, they asked me to take on a little bit more responsibility and be the chief technology officer for all of VSP and keep my responsibility for Eyefinity. So again, great opportunity, got to help us figure out how to leverage technology as a company. And then, then the time came in 2011 where the leader of VSP Vision Care, Gary Brooks, was retiring. And they asked me if I would, move from the technology side and lead that business. And I got to tell you, that was a highlight for me. Those 5 years, there was just an amazing leadership team that I got to work with day in and day out. And probably if I had to pick one favorite part of my career, it was those 5 years. We restructured the business. We grew it, by 25%. We added a number of members, and And then that positioned me to, when the overall CEO was retiring, I got in line and was chosen to be the CEO. And I did that for a couple of years. In all transparency, and I always like to be transparent, there was definitely differences of opinion between myself and the leadership team at that time on the direction the business should be taking. The former CEO stayed on the board and wanted things to really stay more, with the status quo. And I didn't really believe that was what the business needed to do. So we parted ways in 2017, and I moved back from Sacramento to New York.
Okay.
And started doing some consulting work with all of these private equity firms that are around the industry, and obviously our industry is these private equity firms would not be in our industry if it wasn't a great industry. That's
Right.
not what they do. They want to find industries that are exciting and have growth potential and that they know what they can do. So I was lucky enough to, in that process, a guy named Andy Alcorn, who used to run another managed vision care company that I got to know, introduced me to the team at Nordic Partners. And Nordic at that point had made the decision, with Andy's help, to roll the buying groups up. So they bought the 4 largest buying groups: Block Buying Group, HMI, Vision West, and C&E. And decided to put them together. So they asked me to join the board at first. And then about 9 months in, they asked if I would take over as the CEO and help through the integration, and had a great time and amazing. It's always about the team, right? It's always about the team and the team you build. And again, another amazing group of people that I've gotten to work with for the last 5 years. We had to rebuild the entire IT system. We had to, consolidate 4 businesses, develop our own culture, as at that point, we were referred to as Healthy Eyes Advantage. And then we started to look and say, okay, what more do we need? And I mean, this better than anybody. You had the buying groups, and the buying groups served a purpose, right? They helped doctors' offices save money. Right. They worked with many, we worked with 250 vendor partners, so you could buy from whoever you wanted, but hopefully we were able to negotiate deals that were better for you. But it wasn't that sense of community, right? It wasn't that sense of being a part of something like the alliance groups developed, like the Vision Sources and the PECA and those types of organizations developed. So we realized we either have to build these capabilities or we got to buy them. Right. And, I reconnected with Dr. Lance Anderson, who was one of the founders of PECA. And, we figured out that they were available to buy. And after a few months, we were able to acquire them and add them to the Healthy Eyes family. And, then the final step was getting that integration done. And as being in a business that's private equity owned, for the most part, private equity companies bring businesses together. They may buy more others, but eventually those businesses are going to be sold. Right. And either they're sold to other financial players or they're sold to strategic players. Right. And as we were assessing where we were as a company, our belief was that we were really ready to be part of a strategic. So we started talking to a lot of the players in the industry, whether it was the entities that were rolling up private practice, like my eye doctor and your organization, or organizations like VSP and EssilorLuxottica. And VSP got very excited about the opportunity to really get focused on and invest in the independent side of the market. And Mike Guyette, the current CEO over there, great guy. Has had the vision and the execution that he's had for the last few years, and realized that I really need to get focused and get involved with the independents, and it just made sense. And if you look, EssilorLuxottica has done a lot of this themselves by buying groups like OptiPort and Perk and Vision Source. Same thing, because in today's world, we all know 75% of all eye exams done in the U.S. are done by independent eye care professionals. Right. So if you don't take care of independent eye care professionals, you're not taking care of the industry. Right. So it was then that, we ended up, going through the process and working with VSP. And then on October 1st, PECA, which was now the combination of PECA and HEA, was sold to VSP. So sorry, I know that was long-winded, but that's the Marshawn days, the frame guy, all the way back up to.
This is what I wanted to hear, Jim, and there are so many pieces there that I just want to kind of unfold and kind of dig a little more in. And what I really want to kind of go back to is the piece where there were 4 businesses. When I hear 4 businesses, and you have to kind of bring them all together, and you think about culture, and you think about policy, you think about strategy. Man, that's a hell of a job. That's a tough job. I would really like to learn a little bit more about what was the mindset, and how did you make it happen, man? Because that's difficult to accomplish.
Yeah, you have to, when you look at this, it doesn't matter the size, right? These were 4, small to medium-sized businesses that were coming together. But as you said, they each had developed their own business processes, their own culture, their own way of interacting with customers. So for me, first and foremost, you need to listen to each of those existing businesses about what was working, what wasn't working, what are the parts of the culture that need to survive and need to move forward. And so we spent a lot of time in the beginning really understanding what made Block great, what made HMI great, what made C&E great, what made Vision West great. And then what we tried to do was pick the best of those worlds, but then also create our own Healthy Eyes Advantage culture and view of the world. But a lot of it was built on the back of what those founders had put together. So it was that. I think you always have to listen. You learn so much over your career, and I know you already have. And for me, to me, sometimes you learn as much from the people that you would never want to emulate as you do from the people that you'd love to be like. And I think of a number of places where I was working where they decide they bring in a new leader, or they bring someone, and they basically show up and want to completely turn the company into the company they just came from, because everything they were doing there is great. So we're going to do that here. And I always sat there and said, well, if everything was so great over there, why are you here? Why did you leave, right? Why did you leave? There's something there. So it's really all about listening. It's teamwork. I know, some of it sounds like motherhood and apple pie, but it's hard. It's hard because there's also this natural tendency of, I want to get this done. I'm going to just make a decision. I'm going to go. But if you don't have the people with you and you don't have the team supporting where you want to take it, you're not going to get it done anyway. So, culture eats strategy for lunch. You can have the greatest strategy in the world. The culture isn't lined up, it's not happening. So that's really what we focused on.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was listening to a podcast last week. I was traveling somewhere on behalf of the business, my eye doctor, and they were talking about, you can have the best business plan, the best strategy, but if you don't have the people to uplift that strategy and the culture to make it happen, then the business is not going to go anywhere. A lot of people spend a lot of time just looking at strategy, but not really strategizing on having the right people to facilitate that plan to come to fruition, and having the right people, but also making sure that the culture is there to make sure that it can come to fruition as well.
Yeah, I think I've told this story before, but the cultures at Marshawn and VSP were very different, right? Marshawn was a entrepreneurial, hub and spoke leadership strategy. Al Berg was the CEO. He made the decisions. This is how we do things. Basically, just go do your job. So I was there for 10 years. So that stuff rubs off on you.
Right.
You got out to VSP. VSP had a totally different culture. And I remember one time, right in the beginning, I'm standing in front of my new team of, 200, 300 people at Ifinity, and a woman raises her hand and asks a question. And I didn't understand the question. And I was getting into my inner Al Berg mode. I was getting frustrated. It's like, why don't you just do your job and then we'll get back to you. And Steve Baker, if you know Steve Baker, used to lead Ifinity and VSP. Steve popped up and he said, Jim, what she's asking is she wants to understand how her role in the business supports the vision. And I'm
Got it.
like, oh, wow, that's awesome that she wants to know that, because that wasn't where I was from. But
Right.
then I thought back to it's all over the internet and everything you've seen. But when President Kennedy visited the Space Center, and he ran into the guy who was the janitor there, and he was talking to everybody and shaking hands, and he said to the guy, what do you do here? And he said, well, sir, I'm here to put a man on the moon.
Yeah.
And that, like, if you have every person up and down in your organization with a shared consciousness about what your vision is and
Yes.
where you're going, you're unstoppable. You're
Yeah.
unstoppable. And we were talking earlier, before we jumped on, that someone like Sue Downs, who leads my eye doctor, Sue's a perfect example of this. Sets the vision, gets the team going, and you guys are all there, and you see it in the messaging and in what's out there. There's nothing like it. When everyone's singing from the same hymnal, there is nothing like it. It's
Yeah.
outstanding.
And when you have those leaders that actually live the purpose and the core values, and when you have a leader like Sue Downs that started the organization and still the CEO 20 years later, that speaks highly of her investment in my eye doctor, but also her investment in the eye care industry.
Correct.
We help patients live their best lives, but we also look at ourselves as the leaders in eye care as well. And it's because we understand the mission, we're all on the same page, and we know we're going to make an impact.
Yep. Nothing like it. Nothing like it.
Now, I want to kind of pivot and go back to this partnership with PECA and VSP. Now, I'm gonna keep it real with you, Jim. When this news came out, man, everybody was like, "Oh man, you guys sold out. What the hell is going on?" Right? You go on the blogs, you go on Facebook, and everyone that's the independents, they're feeling like you sold them out. So, I would love to just, get your perspective, your opinion, what the actual vision was in regards to why did this move take place? How is this going to help independents? What does that look like? If you don't mind sharing that with the colleagues out there.
Not at all. I understand it. I understand the emotion, and I can understand where someone that isn't involved in the development of the strategy would have that question and want to understand that. So the way I view it is when Healthy Eyes Advantage purchased PECA, and we went to our first meeting together with our national advisory board, which was made up of independent ODs, both from the HEA world and the PEC world. And we polled the group around, what are your biggest concerns? What are the biggest challenges that you're facing? And number one rose to the top that we need help navigating the managed vision care space. We don't have a voice. We're single entities trying to, deal with these large organizations. And to me, while I understand, that it might be viewed as being a sellout, I look at it a little differently. At this point now, independent optometry, and there are 12,000 independent eye care professionals that are a member of the former PECA that is now owned by VSP. They now have a voice. They have a seat at the table. They have two, and present company accepted, because you're one of these people as well. But two of the best leaders from an optometry perspective, in my opinion, in the industry, Dr. Lance Anderson, who was the founder at PECA, and Dr. Justin Manning, who's been the chief member experience officer at HEA and at PECA. Having those two guys now ODs in the organization as a voice with a seat at the table, independent optometry has got to leverage that and use that voice. I love the saying about, if you don't have a seat at the table, you end up on the menu. And that's what happens. So I believe now Justin and Lance will be the amplification of the 12,000. And I know, and I've listened to, Mike Guyette as we've been through this process, and heard Mike say, we are investing in independent private practice, And we feel this acquisition of Pekka is our first step there. And Pekka is going to be a standalone entity that focuses on helping us better serve independent private practice. So I'm sitting here saying it. I get if everyone's listening, they could just say BS or, throw the flag or whatever. But what I would highly recommend is I would have everybody move into the state of Missouri, right? The state of Missouri is show me, right? Yeah. Show me. Let Justin and Lance have some time, be the voice. Let them be there for you. It doesn't hurt you to stay in. You continue to get your rebates and your savings, and you get to participate in peer-to-peers and our annual meetings. Do it and be a voice, and then see what happens. My personal opinion is that what I've heard, and as we were, selling the business, VSP is going to do big things with this and big things for independent eye care professionals. And I get it, but they should get into wait and see mode and not turn their back on it, because I believe they're going to want to be a part of it. I really do.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things look a year from now, or 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer, there's strength in numbers, right? The more we're together, the bigger impact we can make in healthcare, right?
Right.
I always love to share that we're the pulse of healthcare. What we do dictates what healthcare can achieve.
For sure.
We're the only profession that can see live blood vessels by looking at the back of the eye. So we got partnerships with endocrinologists, rheumatologists, allergists, PCPs, pediatricians, all of that jazz.
Yep.
And we just got to do a better job about coming together. So
for sure,
see what this looks like a couple years out. But look, I know Justin fairly well, and he's a bright guy, and his heart's in the right place, and he's all about creating a healthier place and a healthier space.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the opportunity to meet Lance, and one thing I can say about that guy, outside of him just being extremely bright, is he's cool as hell. And every time I see him, he's fresh, man. Like, from top to bottom, I'm like, man, you got some swag, my man.
He does.
In his closet a little bit. You know what I'm saying, Jim?
You'll love this. When Lance and Justin started working together, we ended up saying that Lance is the youngest old OD, and Justin is the oldest young OD. Because Justin's got little kids like you. Nighttime comes, he's putting himself to bed. Lance is out. Is out. He's hanging with the young ODs. He's he's our old young OD. That's how we use him. But no, that's true. Very true.
I love it. So let's switch gears, man. I appreciate you walking me through your journey. But now I want to dive a little bit more into just this leadership piece, right? Mm-hmm. You're a leader, man. I mean, some of us, it's an innate thing. Some of us, it's a learned behavior, a learned thing. Just like, when did you know? I know you had all those siblings. I mean, and that might have popped up, but like, when was that aha moment that I have influence and I want to use my influence in a positive way to make an impact in the world? Like, how did you know? When did that start? Just kind of paint that picture for me, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I think, I joke about it, but I think it is true that a birth order does have something to do with it. You get put into a position where you do have responsibility, and, sadly, both my parents are gone. So it's almost like my wife and I have moved into that role now with the full group. And then I think from there, the next spot I would give credit is, I would say, sports. I played football, basketball, and baseball growing up. Terrible baseball player, but I was a quarterback in football. Now I'm more like an offensive lineman, but I was a quarterback back then, and a captain on a couple of the teams, and that forced a certain level of leadership. And you learn there, even as a young person, that that when you get put into that role, the team's looking at you. Like when you're sitting there in the huddle and you're calling the play, they want to make sure you're going to do this right. Like you're gonna hand the ball to the right guy. You're going to throw it to the right guy. So that started to set the foundation. And then when I got to college, I got involved with a couple of organizations, the National Engineering Honor Society, the National Industrial Engineering Honor Society, and had leadership roles with them. And again, just continued to build it, and was always for me, always watching the people that I was reporting to, trying to figure out, okay, these are the things I'd like to emulate. These are the things I love this guy, but I don't think that that's necessarily the right way to be treating people, and really try to continue. And then when you think about it all, in the end, it all goes back to the golden rule, right? You want to treat other people the way you want to be treated. And even I talked to someone about that. They put a little bit of a caveat on the golden rule of you want to treat other people the way they want to be treated. So you need to understand, like you can't just, if you think, oh, well, I would jump at the chance to take that job, you can't just go tell someone to go do it if they're not ready, or it's not, like we talked about earlier, it's not their calling or not what they want to do. So it's really, that is, I think, one of the most important skills of a leader. And then one of my favorite leadership speakers and authors is this guy, Patrick Lencioni, and he has an amazing book called The Ideal Team Player. And he basically nets everything down to what makes the ideal team player. And the ideal team player is someone who is humble, they're hungry, and they're smart. And smart, not intellectually smart. They're thinking more about intellectually, you're expected to be smart, but it's more emotional intelligence, how you deal with people. And what's great about this book, it's a quick read, and he goes through and you can picture people in your life where they possess maybe just one of those skills. Like if it's just someone that's 100% hungry and they're not humble at all, and they're not, they don't know how to deal, they have no EQ, they're just a bulldozer. And he gives a name to each of them. So for me, when I first read that and first listened to Patrick speak, I really do try to live that as you're taking on, as I've taken on new roles, or as I've been put in different positions, because it's about listening. It's about being humble. It's about setting a vision and being decisive and enabling your team to succeed. But it all comes back to listening, and that saying about, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? We're supposed to be listening to the people around us.
And now you're starting to sound like my wife, man.
Sorry. That's great.
But no, man, I mean, like, that's kind of been the theme of this entire podcast, right? Listening. You have said that word numerous times throughout your journey, numerous times throughout talking about leadership. I mean, that is a common theme. And that's one thing that I see in a lot of great leaders. I see that in my fierce leader over at My Eye Doctor with Sue Downs. I see that with my leaders over at Black Eye Care Perspective. I see that in you. People listen and they're able to communicate better and have clear lines of communication because they actually know what's going on. They're listening to the people and then able to find the right solution to make things happen, right?
Exactly.
Now, I want to go into this leadership a little bit more, but I also want to bring diversity into the picture, right? Because, there's not a lot of diversity in leadership, right? And I would love to see more of that. And, when we were talking about your journey, you were in a lot of places where you were able to get into that next leadership position. How can a Darryl Glover get into that leadership position? How can a Dr. Fayez Magoob, a Dr. Adam Ramsey, a Dr. Harbir Sayan, how do we get in those positions of leadership? Jennifer Lyerly, F. Johnson. So I'd love to be able to kind of break that down, because we all know more diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams. I mean, studies are out there and it's there. But I would love to learn a little bit more about that, because there is a young OD that's coming out of school and they're listening to this podcast. They're watching this podcast and they love everything that they see about you, Jim, and they love what they see about me. But they don't know how to get into that position of leadership, and they have all what it takes. So let's talk about that a little bit more. What do you think we need to do to change that?
It's a really important topic that, for me, I believe people that are in current leadership roles need to look around at their team and assess that diversity. If you're sitting in a team, I remember learning this, if you're sitting in a team where every single person around you says all the same stuff you do, looks like you do, and is just, and you're the leader and they're just telling you, how great you are, you got the wrong team. You don't know, but I think one of my biggest learnings, and I don't know if you've met this guy, but there's a guy named Robert Cathy who is a VSP exec. Robert's was very involved in our in the diversity programs at VSP. And I always tell this story too. Is I remember when I first got out to VSP, and it's like anybody. You think because okay, well, I grew up in New York. It's very diverse. I've interacted with tons of people. I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
And I always remember sitting with Robert, and I have just a quick aside. My son, and I can talk a little bit about some of what I learned through him. But we adopted our son at 13 months from Colombia, so where our family's a mixed race family, and we could probably do a whole podcast on the learnings I've had from that, but I'll come back to that in a second. But when I first met Robert, and we were actually talking about Trevor, and talking about some of the challenges over the course of our life at that point, he taught me about the concept of subconscious bias, and that while maybe your actions or what you say or what you do don't show you as a bad person, people can't help it, but you have to spend time understanding those subconscious biases. Absolutely. And understanding, well, why am I, if I'm picking two folks for a role, am I leaning more towards I'm going to pick the man or the woman that's more like me, or that I think is just going to be easier, not going to give me the hard time, or not going to be different? That's not the right way to look at it. And if you don't recognize those subconscious biases, and I always thank Robert when I see him or when I talk to him, that was eye-opening for me. And that was only, that was 2008 when Marshawn was purchased. Yeah. And again, thinking of myself as we're a multiracial family. I'm a New York guy. I've been around all kinds of races and people, and it's no big deal. It is a big deal if you're not focused on those subconscious biases and making decisions with some of those things in mind. So it starts with recognizing that, and then I would say on the flip side, it's making sure that people are putting themselves out there, and you just did, right? You listed 5 or 6 people who are, to me are already, amazing leaders, and any business or any company would be lucky to have them. And they do a great job of being there and putting them out. But for every one of those 5 people you included that you mentioned, there's probably 30 or 40 behind that. You know what? I'm not comfortable being out there, and I'm going to wait for them to find me. Or the most amazing one I remember learning again during my time at VSP around women, where a male executive, if you're about 50% ready for a job, you'll go, yeah, give it to me. I got it. Put me in, coach. I'll go do the job. There were female executives that are like, I'm only about 95% of it. I'm not ready. And it's like, how do you have to make sure you recognize that too, where if there's a person in your org structure that is ready, put them in, even though some of them are going to fight you because they're going to say, I'm not ready. I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to, and being uncomfortable is okay. I worked with Ginny Rometty, the former CEO of IBM, and Ginny had a great quote: growth and comfort do not go hand in hand.
I like it.
So, it's recognizing those people that will come up and that are ready. They're going to tell you they're not. Put them in those roles. I think that's the best thing we as leaders can do. Look past a little bit. You guys are going to be leaders and going to be the leaders of this industry for many years to come. The ones that you mentioned. The ones behind you that are sitting there going, I better wait, and I got to do this. Pluck them out of there, put them in a role, and get them going. And they'll knock it out of the park. There's no question. There's no question.
And I love that. And when I hear that, especially with the women scenario, it's more of sponsorship, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you saying the person that is in that position behind closed doors about the people that are ready with that diverse background? Are you speaking their name for the opportunity? Are they a part of that conversation?
Yeah.
Those are the type of
Yeah.
conversations that need to be happening whenever there's opportunities for some type of leadership. And I'm glad that you brought up those two major points, because that is impactful.
Yeah.
You got to have more mentorship, but you can't mentor the hell out of someone. You got to be able to
No.
sponsor them and then tell the team members that this person is ready, this person has what it takes. And even if they don't know all of it, you're there to help, elevate them and assist them and guide them and coach them and mold them to get the tools and resources they need to be successful. I love that.
Exactly. Let them know it's so. You know what? You're going to fail, and you may fail fast, and we're going to pick you up, and you're going to pick yourself up, and you're going to go. And oh, by the way, if you're uncomfortable, that's okay, because that's how you're going to grow, because growth and comfort don't go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And like I remember to this day when they asked me, and I was honored to ask me to take over the VSP Vision Care business. I was like, why are you picking I still in my head, Al Berg, I told this story earlier. So in Al Berg at Marchand, he always, for my whole career with him, would always just call me the computer guy. So I'd be like, why are you putting the computer guy in charge of the most important business? And now I look back and say, it's because they saw something and they believed. Yeah. But I got to tell you, I was scared. My first time standing in front of that group, trying to make them realize, hey, I'm not just a computer guy. I'm not going to destroy this business. Please believe and work with me. It was not comfortable, but right. People rallied, and it was really great and a lot of fun. So you're right. It's feeling supported and knowing people are there, giving people the opportunity to fail or struggle, and know that, we're not throwing you out after one mistake. We're here to help you grow.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah. You've dropped a lot of gems tonight, a lot of great information, very impactful journey. But I got to ask you, another question. It may be the last question, but I definitely need an answer to this question.
Sure.
What does the landscape of optometry look like, 5 years from now, man? I mean, there's been so much change just in the last year alone. I mean, from, legislation to,
right.
Telemedicine, to private equity, to, just a need for more optometrists, to students not passing boards like they used to. There's a lot of variables playing right now, but I'm curious to know, with someone that has great insight, that someone that has great leadership and that's seen a lot of this industry, where do you see it going 5 years from now, Jim?
Today when I woke up, I always see my, the V-mail and my, review of optometry. And I found this great article, and I thought this guy hit it right on, where he said, the future of optometry holds exciting opportunities for ODs to enhance care, grow in their profession, and even improve society. You know who said that? You. You wrote that article for a review of optometric business. And honestly, when I read it this morning, I'm like, he's got it. And here's why. What you're saying there is so true. I think there is enormous opportunity for optometry with the rising population, the aging population, higher incidence of serious eye disease like AMD and diabetic retinopathy, and there aren't enough MDs to just transfer the work to, and they are going to get more and more dependent on the OD. So the opportunity is there. I think medical eye care is absolutely critical. I think where we got in our own way, and this was definitely during my time at VSP, and in your article you reference, the importance of the AOA and the work you guys do with the AOA, and I couldn't agree more. But we had this real difference of opinion about, should managed vision care plans go away and everything just move to medical, and it just was not, again, this is coming from me, and maybe someone from the AOA, they'd say different, but for me that's not the answer. The answer is working together. Leverage the managed vision care plan to get someone to come in your door, And that person that comes in the door is going to become one of your next medical patients. But
Yeah.
just getting rid of it, people equate going and getting an annual eye exam to their benefit, whether it's their VSP benefit or their iMed benefit or their United Healthcare. They get in the door. So use it, leverage it, and then start to build that medical practice, because your point in the article is so true. There are so many exciting opportunities. And I know when you talk to the students, and I get to talk to them as well at times, that's the part, that's what you became doctors to treat patients and care for patients. And it's more than just going and getting your eyes checked and getting a new pair of glasses. It's about your overall health and wellness tied to your eyes.
Yeah.
And so I see the future as being really bright. I believe that we need to do a better job of working together on how to best do that. How do you get more patients into the door? How do you increase access? And then how do you, the technologies, the other thing we don't want, the technologies aren't going to go away, right? We're not going to be able to stop them. Another one of my famous Al Berg jokes was when we first started, it was the early days of the portals and people ordering online. And he says, he comes into my office and, Jim, we have to turn off the internet. And I'm like, no, Al, we're not going to turn off the internet. We're going to figure out how to use the internet. So things like telemedicine, right? Things like, how do we use those tools to stay more connected to the patients, as opposed to a patient that's on a 14 or 16-month cycle? Maybe there's a way for me to connect with them on a monthly basis, even if it's stuff I'm not necessarily billing with. I'm keeping their eye health and their overall health and wellness top of mind. So I'm bullish on the future, and I believe that we ourselves, we the industry, we the potentially the profession, we could get into and it's not my profession. I'm not speaking for it, but could almost be their own worst nightmare, as opposed to just being a little bit more open-minded, a little bit more cutting edge. And I get it. I understand. We've done all this research on typical ODs and what their Myers-Briggs scores are and what's important to them. And I know in general and I don't want to paint everyone with a brush and have my subconscious bias, right? But it's like risk averse. We don't want to, we're not going to jump in, but we're going to need to take some risks. We're going to need to increase access. We're going to need to increase awareness. But look, already, when you look at the number of people that have a managed vision care plan, don't care which one it is, that do not use that benefit. So every year they pay, there's probably over 100 million people pay for a benefit they never use. Right there. Let's increase the pie right there. So it's, there's so much opportunity. It's just getting it organized, getting it done right. That's what the challenge is going to be. But working together, right? Working together as partners between the businesses and the doctors and the state associations and the AOA. We could do great things together, and there's nothing to be fighting about, really.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, again, strength in numbers, we're better together. We're more impactful when we can work together as a team. We're more impactful when we can listen to each other and figure out, who has, certain strength in certain areas, and we let those people lead in those areas. We just got to do more of that. And I am excited about the future of optometry. I still think to this day, 10 years after practicing, that this is the best profession ever. And I'm going to continue to push it forward. And I'm going to continue to partner with people like you, Jim. I'm going to continue to partner with people like Sue Downs and my Eye Doctor family and all my independent ODs out there as well, to make sure that we continue to push this amazing pressure forward. To your point earlier, I had a patient come in today that told me, I've had this benefit for 5 years, Dr. Glover. I've been paying for it, but I haven't had an eye exam. And I was like, why am I paying for this and I'm not coming in? 5 years. And guess what, Jim? That patient needed glasses. They needed glasses. 5 years paying for a benefit and wasn't able to see as clearly as they could potentially see. On top of that, that patient had dry eyes, which was impacting their lifestyle. So it is important that we continue to work together, but we really need to work together to make optometry more sexy.
Yeah.
Because we have made optometry so boring that no one wants a piece of us. And
Hmm.
we got to do a better job of pushing this profession forward. It's the truth, man. I
Yep.
was just at North Carolina Central University top of this week, and I was out there talking to young Black men, just telling them that we need more Black optometrists and men. There's less than 1% of optometrists that are Black men. And they were blown away by the profession. They had no awareness of it because no one was talking about it, right? So we just got to do a better job of working together, pushing the profession forward, creating more awareness about optometry from a patient standpoint, consumer standpoint, but also for a future OD standpoint, because we don't have enough. We need more.
Hmm. Yep.
And we're going to need more to continue to push this scope expansion because people need to see ODs. To your point earlier, there's not enough OMDs. So we are the solution to solve the problem for the aging community that's out there, my friend.
Absolutely. No question. No question
Yeah.
whatsoever. And it sounds like, as far as the sexy part, we need Lance. We need Lance, right?
We need to put him on a big billboard, man, and just put him out there. But hey, man, no, this has been great. I was going to ask you, what advice do you have for eye care? But I think you already hit the nail on the head with it, man. We just got to work together, right?
Exactly.
So I really appreciate that, man. And, honestly, I really appreciate you coming on this show this evening, Jim. This has been a monumental show. This has been a fantastic show. I've learned so much from you, and I'm pretty sure everyone out there has learned, why that PECA VSP deal took place, how to manage a business when you got 4 different businesses coming together, how to be a leader, how to sponsor, colleagues to make sure that they get in those positions of leadership, those positions that can be impactful, having that diverse opportunity to elevate the business, but elevate the profession as well. I just want to thank you so much, man, for coming out. And we're going to have to do a part 2, man. I got to learn more about your family, man. But I'm looking forward to those cards. I'm going to hold you to that.
You got it. No, I'll send them down. Thank you so much. It was an honor and a privilege to be on here tonight, and really enjoyed the discussion and look forward to continuing it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, everyone, for tuning in tonight. It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover. Stay healthy, stay positive, and stay blessed. And until next time, peace. This is a defocus. All right, colleagues, and it's a wrap. Thank you dearly for hanging out with the Defocus Media team. We hope truly something resonated with you. And if it did, be sure to give us 5 stars. And make sure you follow us on all social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you named it. And our handle is at Defocus Media on all platforms. And until next time, be sure to keep it 2020. And we look forward to seeing